how's it going, gang? As you can see, FoundFlix Video is open once more for business with an extra special Halloween special. On Halloween, talking about a Halloween movie, Double Spooks. Now, if you've been with the channel for a while, you might remember back in 2018, when the new Halloween came out, I did a big video covering the whole series up to that point, with one notable exception, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, because it is entirely its own thing that has literally nothing to do with the rest of the series. But its time is due to be featured, because it deserves more recognition in my opinion. If you don't know much about the scenario that led to this spin-off, after the end of Halloween 2, the idea amongst the filmmakers and producers was that Michael Myers was indeed dead for good. The intent, according to Halloween 3 director Tommy Lee Wallace going forward, was instead of another Myers-based sequel, to rather mutate the franchise into a yearly anthology series of films under the Halloween banner, which could in turn lead to their own spin-offs and sequels. To me, that sounds like a slam dunk, right? Cash City if it works, and could easily have expanded the series stylistically and story-wise beyond just being Myers-centric, a knife film as Wallace describes it. The problem is, when Season of the Witch came out way back in 1982, the audience had no idea what they were getting into, and based on having Halloween and 3 in the title and everything, they were confused and upset by what they were presented. This resulted in an immediate backlash, and the movie wound up being a pretty big bomb. As far as the series goes overall, it's second to last after Halloween 5. Woof, that's not good. Simply because it isn't what people or fans of the franchise expected. No Myers cutting people. It was trashed critically, and in some cases lasted only a single week in theaters before having to shirk away in embarrassment at what was obviously a failure, at least commercially. Because honestly, there's tons of movies that I love that were actually box office bombs. This does not mean that it's a bad movie. Over the years, Season of the Witch has always been the unappreciated outlier of the series, but over time has come to have more of a following, myself included. Because my initial experience with Halloween 3 was watching it on cable as a young lad during the Halloween season. And I always loved it because it really evokes the feeling of Halloween night, in my opinion, the most of the entire series. Sure, I was all, wait, Halloween 3, where's the mask guy? But I always became engrossed in the movie because it was so weird and interesting. Something drastically different and unexpected for the series. Referring back to Wallace, rather than a knife movie, it was a pod movie. A weird kind of mystery, sci-fi horror hybrid that I actually think is pretty awesome. And this also gets a lot of flack for its completely bonkers plot, but I'm like, early 80s computer witchcraft powered by a runestone from Stonehenge with a master plan to kill all the children in the country with Halloween masks? Yes, please! It's absurd and entertaining in a very particular way. And we all know objectively it can't be the worst of the franchise. That has to be Halloween Resurrection, come on! Halloween 3 is at least able to exist entirely on its own merits, rather than simply existing as a confused, pointless copy, while also still impressively retaining the feel and atmosphere in many ways of the early Myers Halloween flicks, thanks to a variety of factors behind the scenes. First off is the aforementioned director Tommy Lee Wallace, considered John Carpenter's protege, which makes sense as he was the production designer on The Fog and Halloween, making his directorial debut here. So this guy knows his stuff when it comes to Halloween. He is easily able to evoke Carpenter's signature visual suspenseful feel and style, which is also aided by legendary director of photography Dean Cundey, who shot the first 2 Halloweens as well as a number of other classics like the Back to the Future trilogy, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Jurassic Park. Need I say more? I mean, it still looks better than CG nowadays, and it's frickin' 30 years old. This dude is a legend, and his touch adds ample atmosphere to the creepy proceedings, and again feels like a natural visual extension of the main Halloween films since, he shot those as well. The same goes for the score, provided by John Carpenter and longtime collaborator Alan Howarth. It's designed to feel reminiscent of the distinct and memorable haunting score of the first Halloween, all dread and eerie synths, but done stylistically here as an extension of the original, with new themes that fit into the same world, but exploring a different side. I find all of this really interesting because despite it being considered a disaster, it's obvious that a lot of creative thought was put into finding a balance between doing something new and also providing some aspects and an overall feeling a Halloween series viewer would expect. To me, it's really not that far off from the rest of the series. Sure, there's no Myers, but it's time for a whole new monster in my book. Finally, I have to point out the cast, led by Tom Atkins with the most powerful mustache in Hollywood. Step aside, Burt Reynolds. I've always loved this guy, and having him as the lead in a horror flick is always a delight. He's a kind of skeezy, always drunken scumbag, and actually a doctor here, but he also still manages to come across as incredibly charming. In this regard, he's second to none. Then there's Dan O'Harely as the scene-chewing Irish villain Cochrane. This guy oozes friendliness and warmth, so of course it turns out that he's totally evil, and O'Harely relishes his role throughout. I say all that to set the stage to say that with these many aspects alone going for it, Halloween 3 deserves a fresh look to consider what it did right, and to appreciate it as its own unique, bizarre tale that happens to fall under the Halloween banner. So let's take the journey together. Opening on a dark and empty street on October 23rd, a man, Harry, emerges from the shadows running for his life. A car follows ominously after. The man comes across a junkyard, but no one is there to his dismay. The car shows up and he crouches down to hide as they slowly pass. Phew, that was close. But as soon as he gets to his feet, the car reverses back and drives in. A goon in a gray suit appears, strangling him to the ground. He struggles to reach for a nearby chain attached to a block under a car. He gets it loose, sending the car rolling towards them. The dude casually turning and just gets crunched without much reaction at all. Another goon gets out of the car, sending him running deeper into the aisles of junk. A storm starting to brew in the sky. An hour later at a nearby gas station, it's pouring down rain. A lone employee, Walter, is watching TV, and it's a story on Stonehenge. And quite shockingly, one of the rune stones tied to the 90-year cycle of the moon has gone missing. Impressive in a way, as the stone weighs a whopping 5 tons. How the heck would you steal that thing? I mean, woo-wee. Then a Silver Shamrock commercial comes on, including its incessant memorable jingle, informing us it's 8 more days till Halloween, Halloween, introducing the so-called Big Three masks: Skull, Jack-o'-lantern, and Witch. The announcer deeming them fun, frightening, and glow-in-the-dark to boot. Lightning strikes, knocking out the station's power. Walter suspiciously peers out of the window, hearing some clattering. Harry appears out of nowhere, looking frantic, and grabs his shirt, whispering, "They're coming," and pulls out the same Silver Shamrock pumpkin mask and collapses. Walter loads him in the tow truck to get him help, seeing they're being watched by another suited dude as they drive off. Lots of suited dudes! Where are these dudes coming from? We then move on to meeting drunken Dr. Dan Chalice, and immediately upon seeing him, his wife is annoyed. He has presents for his 2 kids. A pair of super lame, not Silver Shamrock masks. "What are you doing here, Dad?" Which of course Mom has already got for them. Her bemusing, "Nice try." The kids put on the masks and dance around singing the annoying jingle. And Dan gets a beep on his pager. Remember those? Of course you don't. The call he got was about Harry, who is still clutching the mask, but apparently stable thanks to Walter's help. The commercial comes on the 4th time already in like 10 minutes, causing Harry to wake up, shuddering in terror. "They're going to kill us all," he croaks. "All of us." Just as another car of suits arrive at the hospital. Dan asks Nurse Agnes who's next, but it's been a quiet night, so he goes off to get some shut-eye, and flirts with her along the way, saying he should have married her instead, and playfully grabs her ass. Ah, casual sexual assault in the workplace. The good old days. 1982. Spotting a dude at the end of the hall. He dons some leather gloves and comes upon the unconscious Harry, covering his mouth and poking his eyes out, then yanks on his face until it distorts into a broken rubbery mess. He wipes his gloves off on the curtains, "Don't want to ruin my fancy murder gloves," and gets caught by Agnes, asking what he's doing. He just walks out, Doc awoken to her screaming, discovering the body. And when Agnes stumbles to explain, he chases after and catches up to him just as he's getting into his car. The man then pours gasoline all over himself and ignites it, causing the car to explode in a huge fireball. Well, so much for asking him any questions. Yeesh. A bit later, the place is bustling with cops and firefighters, while Dan is on the phone with his wife, assuring her that he'll still take the kids, and notices the Shamrock logo on the back of the mask, and considers, could it be connected? Yes, of course. Harry's daughter, Ellie, shows up to ID the body, and wants to know what happened. The cop tells her it must have been drug-related, but Dan isn't buying it, talking with the coroner and ex-flame Teddy, pointing out that he couldn't have been on drugs, and that he looked more like a businessman. She scoffs that his assailant must have been been incredibly strong to be able to crush Harry's face like that, and Dan begs for her to take the case, which after some hesitation she agrees to, joking that she's always been good at moonlighting, planting him a kiss on the cheek. Geez, who hasn't he dated at the hospital? This guy gets around. Jumping to the 29th, Dan is busy with his favorite pastime, drinking and smoking cigarettes, some weird cartoons on the telly. He asks the bartender to flip the station, first catching a glimpse of a promo for the original Halloween airing on TV, then jumping right into our favorite jingle. Dan, annoyed, asks him to change it, the guy goading him, asking, "Don't you have any Halloween spirit?" Dan only giving a gruff "no" in response, the way only Tom Atkins can.
What's the matter? Don't you have any Halloween spirit? No.
Ellie shows up to ask for help, the nurse saying she could find him here. Well, that's reassuring. When he's not off duty at the hospital, he's down here drinking his ass off down the street. Great. He apologizes about her father, and she asks if he said anything that night, and tells her the truth about how he was holding a mask and saying they were going to kill us all, and admits to having no idea what the hell is going on. They then pay a visit to her dad's shop, which has been struggling since the big mall opened nearby. Ellie saying it was the kids that kept him going, showing off a display of shamrock masks. She's been doing some investigating into his last few days, going through his appointment book, seeing on the 20th that he picked up an order of masks from the factory and was supposed to go to dinner the next day and never showed up, figuring the trouble must have occurred somewhere between there and when he was in the town of Santa Mira. Thinking that they must know something, she vows to not go home until she discovers what happened to her father, the two teaming up to take a trip to the town and the home of the Silver Shamrock Factory. Dan calls Linda and basically just bails on her, saying he has to go do something and can't get out of it, abruptly hanging up and hopping in a car with Ellie. Screw the fam, I got stuff to do. Now that is a hero right there, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care about my family, I'm gonna go pork this stranger and go get into some misadventures. Sounds more fun anyway, stupid kids. Panning back to the shop, it's time once more. Now just 2 days to go to Halloween and the mysterious big giveaway. They arrive at the extremely remote town of Santa Mira. She wonders why would they put the factory in the middle of nowhere, Dan informing her that it was once a farming community until the 50s, when a wealthy Irishman came in and opened the toy factory. The largest in the world, it turns out. The town doesn't seem too sinister, but the residents don't appear to take too kindly to outsiders, literally everyone staring out the window at them while they drive by, and see a surveillance camera also following their every move when they come to a stop right outside the factory. She considers that they need a plan first, and decide to go back to the gas station and pose as buyers and rent a room in the motel, or at least they'll have a place to talk without being watched. They meet the owner Rafferty, and surprise, surprise, there is a vacancy at the motel. Dan asks her to distract him while he scopes out the guest book in the office, and indeed her father did stay here as she suspected. The elusive Mr. Cochran slowly drove by the motel, Rafferty calling him a great man, a true genius. Yeah, who could have thought of making Halloween masks? This guy's frickin' Einstein reincarnated over here. Good gravy, man. A Winnebago barrels in with an extra American family with some seriously impressive duds. Buddy, his wife Debbie, and their son Buddy Jr. Another lady drives up, Marge, irritated about her order being messed up, which is forcing her to stay in this dump again, she fumes. Man, things sure got busy around here all of a sudden. As Dan points out, the place is a zoo. He tells her about her dad staying here and she wants to go to the factory, but he wants to stay the night as it's getting a little late. And it's time for a drink. Yeah, I mean, what is it, 3 p.m. after all? It's time to get my drink on. My alcohol level is too low. I can't think without it. He suggests maybe getting his own room, worried about her being comfortable. She devilishly asks, where does he want to sleep? He retorts, that's a dumb question, and goes in for a kiss. Wow, okay. Sparks are flying even though they are practically strangers. Cannot resist the allure of that stash power. Whoosh. Step aside, ladies. Over a PA, the familiar voice of Jamie Lee Curtis tells the town it's time for the 6 o'clock curfew, the town locking down for the night. That won't stop Dan from getting some more booze at a local store, running into a homeless guy asking for a drink, assuring him that he has no diseases. Well, that's a relief. Yeah, go ahead, knock yourself out. Dan asks if he knows anything about Cochran, and he chuffs, of course he does. He made Santa Mira what it is, and brought in workers from the outside, even refusing to let a local like himself work there counter to his disdain. He urges him to watch out, as Cochran has cameras placed everywhere. But regardless, he yells out, "Fuck you!" Dan trying to get him to calm down. He doesn't care, yelling that this will be the last Halloween for that factory of his, and intends to get some Molotov cocktails and burn the whole sucker down, continuing to grumble about it being the last Halloween as he walks off. Making it to his shack, he helps himself to a snack of Easy Cheese. Boy, I used to love that stuff as a kid. They probably stopped making it because it gave you cancer or something. I wouldn't be surprised. Definitely not a lot of cheese in that, I can tell you that much. And is confronted by more suits. He falls to his knees, and one grabs the sides of his head, crushing it and straight ripping it clean off, with no reaction as usual. Not even like, "Whoa dude, way to rip that dude's head off," which is obviously the appropriate reaction. Ellie returns to the hotel and gets startled by Marge, asking if she's picking up an order too. Yeah, sure, she lies, going on that they make great masks, but since Biz has gotten bigger, they're a lot harder to come by, and is disappointed that the quality is dipping as well. The trademark logo came right off the dang thing. She goes into her room, placing down the tag, and knocks it over, seeing a chip of some kind on the other side. Meanwhile, Dan checks in with Teddy, but she doesn't have anything solid, and thinks that there must have been some kind of mistake, as when digging through the remains of the car explosion, they only found parts and metal shavings, leaving a disappointed Dan to call back the next day. He comes to the room and is seduced by Ellie in a spicy nightgown. Again, still basically strangers, but okay, sure, why not? Some nice moldy music, really cranking the romance of the scene. They snuggle afterwards, and she's ready for round 2, and decides now to ask how old she is. Usually better to ask that ahead of time, but I don't know. In her room, Marge is drawn to the badge, noticing the chip, and foolishly decides to take a bobby pin and starts fiddling with the circuits, sending a blue laser beam at her face. Ellie next door hears asking, "What was that?" Dan muttering, who cares? Her lips are blown off, and her eyes are all weird and bulgy looking, and a bug crawls out of her mouth. Well, that's probably not a normal thing for a mask to do, shooting deadly blue lasers out of it and whatnot. Just what is that shady silver shamrock up to? Things only become more suspicious when soon after a shamrock van rolls up, and a bunch of dudes in white coats step out and retrieve Marge's body. Dan tries to get a look, saying he's a doctor, only getting, "Don't worry, she'll be provided the best in medical treatment in response," just as Cochran pulls up, also assuring that they have a marvelous emergency treatment facility at the factory. Well, that seems like a really weird thing to have at a toy factory, but well, I don't know, I'm not in the toy biz. Discussing with the boys, one tells him that it was a misfire, and the duo decide to leave to avoid suspicion, and very naturally back slowly away from the parking lot. Yep. We're not sticking out here at all. Just don't even look at us. Don't mind us. Now, certain something strange is going on, the next morning he calls Teddy, again with more confusing updates. That even in the hot fire, that there still should have been some kind of bone fragments and teeth, but that they've turned up nothing to indicate a body being in the explosion. He asks her to find out more about Cochran, and she agrees, but it's gonna cost him some serious dinners when they get back. Man, you drive a hard bargain, Teddy. He hangs up, seeing what must be a tap on the line, meaning that Cochran heard their entire conversation. Well, nice knowing you, Teddy. They decide now is the time to check things out at the factory and get some more information on Ellie's dad's order. The lady's saying that he picked up the order himself and shows off his signature. She doesn't remember the transaction, but another guy, Red, does, informing them that he loaded the order and Harry didn't say where he was going, only that he was headed north. Well, no real answers there. Buddy's family comes storming in to see Cochran. Buddy Jr. just wants to see where they make the masks, and Cochran comes in warmly greeting the family and congratulates Buddy for selling more masks than anyone else in the country. Yeah, that's obviously is a badass salesman. Just look at him. The room responding with polite applause. He then turns to Dan and Ellie, saying, "As for my other friends," Dan interjecting, "Mr. and Mrs. Smith," he apologizes for last night's disturbance and tells them that Marge is going to be fine and was flown to a hospital in San Francisco. And as far as their order, he has happily replaced the entire thing at no charge, leading to even more rapturous applause. Wow, what a great guy. There's no way that he's actually evil or anything. It's time for a tour of the factory, and Buddy invites Dan and Ellie along. They see the molds of the masks and how they're made. Then coming to the so-called Hall of Fame room, showing off many of Cochran's successful toys over the years, which includes joke toys as well, like sticky toilet paper and what have you. Again, this dude obviously a genius of pranks! In another room, Buddy Jr. demands a mask. Cochran smirking, "That's just what I had in mind." "I'm sure you do, bud." But he hands him another one that he says has been through through final processing, and the boy puts it on, Buddy wondering what that means. Cochran is dodgy, offering a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and they do want to see behind the door themselves, but Cochran refuses. Final processing, eh? Might as well put evil headquarters this way, do not enter please. Dan peers around the area, seeing motionless dudes stationed everywhere on surveillance, and thinks that it's time that they take their leave, mentioning that they look quite similar to the man who killed her father. They pass a garage, seeing her father's car inside, flanked by some guys, and even more come out when she gets closer, and she gives up, discussing after she knows what she saw, and Dan thinks that it's time to bring in the Marines, asking her to pack while he goes to call the police. But when placing the call, he only gets an error message that it can't go through, also no doubt thanks to Cochran, and the commercial comes on, now only one more day to Halloween. More alarmingly, when he returns to the room, Ellie is gone, with a bunch of suits waiting there in a formation. They punch down the door, and Dan escapes through the back window, running into the empty streets. Cars patrolling everywhere, he stays out of sight. He tries a payphone and gets the same roadblock of not being able to connect the call, slinking down when another car comes by. Looks like it's all up to Danny Boy. Hopefully he's had his medicine for today, which, Colt 45s. Sneaking into the factory and climbing through an open window, he gets inside. He cautiously makes his way through the facility, staying out of the mini-camera sight, and comes to a back office, finding an old woman in Western clothing knitting. He demands to know where the girl is and starts shaking her, causing her head to fall off, exposing a bunch of intricate mechanics inside, which, if it wasn't obvious already, must be similar technology behind all of his mini goons, essentially all realistic-looking robots, hence the lack of emotion and super strength. One appears and throws him into a bunch of boxes, then puts his hands on the side of his head and squeezes. Dan flips him over, punching him in the face, which does nothing. Another hard blow to the body, and he punches right into it, pulling out a bunch of cables covered in yellow ooze. And hey, see, technically Michael Myers is in the movie, because the bot credited as assassin here is played by none other than Dick Warlock that played Myers in Halloween 2. There you go, it's basically right in line with the rest of the series. Stop giving it so much crap. Another appears and gets him, along with Cochran showing up, muttering clumsy to his fallen robot. He asks where Ellie is, saying she's resting, and Cochran now knows who he really is, calling him Dr. Chalice. He smiles, it will be morning soon, Halloween morning, a very busy day for me, and thinks that as a man of medicine, he might find his plan quite interesting. He's taken to an elevator behind the final processing door and descends down into a massive space. Dan is confused, asking what is this place? Cochran calling it ancient technology. The power source of his scheme is the stolen Stonehenge runestone, seeing that along with a bunch of computers nearby manned by more robot bros. Cochran chuckles they had a heck of a time getting it here, and that he wouldn't believe how he did it. Yeah, I would like to know that too. How exactly do you steal that, let alone transport a 5-ton stone without detection? Pretty impressive stuff, Cochran. Guiding him over to the actual final processing area, he picks up a piece of the runestone and explains that it has a powerful force within it. Even a particle can be devastating, and places a fragment behind the logo badge. And now we know how this whole crazy plan works, placing pieces of the stone in each of the masks to harness the power of the runestone and basically to kill the wearer. But just to make things a bit more clear, Cochran offers a demonstration. We see a room made to look like an ordinary family den, where Buddy and his family are being escorted, obviously unaware of any ill intention at play. The goons close the door, seeing it's marked as Test Room A. Debbie finds this all a bit strange, but Buddy promises that Cochran will be here any minute and must just want his opinion on some commercials, but also finds it odd as Cochran refused to let him place an order for next year. Debbie joking that maybe there won't be a Halloween next year. No, it's because you're gonna be dead. Nothing to do with that. Cochran orders them to roll it, and the commercial kicks on for the big giveaway. The announcer instructs the kids to put on their masks and watch the magic pumpkin. The signal continues and grows more intense, and Buddy Jr. is suddenly not looking so good. He tries to pull at the mask, and it kind of starts melting on his face. He falls to the floor, and a pile of crickets pour out of his mouth, causing his mom to pass out. Snakes and other critters start coming out and turn on Dad, biting his legs, now bugs crawling all over the entire room. Well, that was certainly quite chilling. Probably probably the scariest scene in the whole movie, and as we know, it's generally taboo to kill kids in horror movies, but here that's kind of the whole point. As we jump around the country, seeing kids in multiple states all donned in their shamrock masks, and excited for the big giveaway, even with shamrock vans taking to the streets, telling the kids to head home and turn on the TV. Back with Teddy, she's finally figured out that there are other odd parts amongst the debris. Robot parts, no doubt, and attempts to call Dan, but gets the same error message that he did. She calls another colleague, not noticing a goon entering the room, who goes to a supply cabinet pulling out a surgical power drill. My knee hurts. Yeah, still preoccupied with the parts, she's about to phone the sheriff, but gets attacked, thrown to the ground, the guy taking a drill to the side of her head. Man, these guys do not mess around. Dan gets tied to a chair, Cochran encouraging him to enjoy the show. But there's one thing he wants to know. Why? That's a good question. Cochran scoffs. Why do I need a reason? And said that he's always loved a good joke, and considers this the best joke ever for the children. Yeah, pretty hilarious to kill millions of innocent kids. That is funny, I didn't think of it that way. Great joke. Though he does have a slightly more substantial motive beyond pure evil, that the children have forgotten the true meaning of Halloween, or the Festival of Samhain, now only thought of as children wearing masks and begging for candy. He recalls how it was treated back in his home in Ireland, how they would be sitting by the fire and fearing that the undead were looking in trying to join them, remembering the hills ran red with blood, calling sacrifice a part of their world, their craft. Witchcraft, Dan realizes, Cochran saying that the time has come again. They don't decide these things, but the planets do, as they are in alignment once more, which is generally an important part to any evil ritual. Make sure those dang planets are aligned or you're just gonna be wasting your time, bro. To 3,000 years, 10,000 years, you put in the time, you put in the work, and when those planets are aligned, then it's time. He puts a skull mask on Dan, telling him the world is going to change tonight, and he's glad that he gets to watch it, gravely wishing him a happy Halloween and leaving.
Happy Halloween.
It's 7:50 already, and with the broadcast at 9, there's no time to spare. He shuffles across the floor with some difficulty, smashing the TV with his legs, and uses a shard of glass to cut his restraints, then tosses the mask over the camera. A crony tries to tell Cochran about the camera. He's on a phone call with an important client and doesn't listen, allowing the doc to unscrew a grate and ascend into the air ducts, huffing it to another area. He calls Linda, warning her to get rid of the kids' masks, yowling that he saw them kill a whole family, but she assumes that he's as drunk as usual and hangs up. Stone cold, Linda, but also kind of completely understandable. He tracks down Ellie and gets her free, and Cochran finally knows where they are, sending the goons in hot pursuit. They get blocked and utilize a rack of masks to sneak right past the group in the control room. Don't mind me, just a rack here, nothing to look at. More suits appear, sending them hiding behind some boxes. Seeing a tag sticking out gives Dan an idea. He snatches the box and crawls right up by the group and gets to the main computer randomly pressing buttons. Man, these robots are not very observant, are they? As it's actually Cochran that spots him, and Dan sprints to the rafters and dumps out the box of tags down below, causing them to all misfire, destroying the machinery and taking out all the bots. Cochran is a bit taken aback by this development, but the signal appears to still be going strong. The tones again grow more intense, and he turns back to the runestone that begins to rumble ominously, and a blue energy field manifests in a circle around the computers. Now realizing he's sunk, Cochran gives a little clap of honor to Dan as they run off, and a beam from the stone and circle shoot directly into his body, and he fades away into nothing. The stone and computers explode and take out the entire factory by the look of it as they hoof back to the car and drive off into the night. Woohoo! They did it, right? Not so fast, pal. Flipping through the radio station, he hears a jingle come on encouraging the kids to hurry home. He still wants to do something, and she just kind of blankly staring off into space. Oh no, she's been robotified! She grabs his face, causing the car to careen off the road and swerve all over the place before crashing into a tree. He gracefully dives out of the car and cautiously rounds to the other side, seeing her robot arm still attached to the door handle. She surprises him, going for his neck, and Dan grabs a tire iron and proceeds to bash her face in, goo spewing from her mouth, and one more big swing takes her whole head off. Nice shot, Danny boy. The rest of the body tries one more time, but ultimately ceases to function and tumbles to the ground. Coming full circle with the beginning, implying that Ellie's dad must have gone through the exact same experience as Dan, we catch up to Walter back at the gas station. And this time it's Dan rushing up and demanding to use the phone, yelling it's life and death. We see it is 9 o'clock on the dot, and the broadcast begins. Dan tries to convince whoever is on the other end him to shut it off, explaining that it means the deaths of millions of people. Kids come in each of the masks, and Walter offers them some candy. They are then drawn into the screen as the signal continues. They fortunately do listen to Dan, the channel turning to a technical difficulty screen, but a kid just changes the channel. But that one also follows suit, going off the air, leaving only one last station. That's right, back in the old days, you only had like 5 total stations, not like 5 million like you do now. He begs, "You gotta turn it off, there's no time." Really getting animated, he screams to, "Stop it! Stop it!" And things abruptly end, leaving things a bit ambiguous here. I guess originally things ended the same way visually, but the credits were accompanied by the anguished screams of children all across America dying, which is pretty effed up. Of course, they removed the screams in the end, but I don't really think there's much of a question of what ultimately happened. Sure, we're dealing with computer witchcraft, which means from a logical or reasonable standpoint, all bets are off. But it did at the very least seem that in order for Cochrane's plan to work, the runestone and computer area broadcasting the signal would have to be functioning. But they were both exploded at least a few minutes before the 9 o'clock broadcast began. So without that, it makes no sense in what was established that the mass death beam would occur, melting little kids and all spewing out creepy crawlies. That's why I think that Dan ultimately did succeed in saving the children across the nation, despite losing a mistress and, well, probably his family along the way as well. What the hell kind of excuse would you have for being gone that whole time? All I can say for sure is that Linda is gonna be pissed. Well, looks like it's about closing time for a FoundFlix video today. Hopefully this let you appreciate the bonkers madness that is the underappreciated Halloween 3 season of The Witch. I'm honestly bummed that it wasn't more of a success, and so we didn't end up having more spin-offs, because I really am intrigued by what they could have done with the franchise name. Regardless, at least we'll always have Season of the Witch as a glimpse into this possibility. Happy Halloween, everybody, and stay safe out there. What do you think of Halloween 3 and its ending? Do you think Dan won, or were all the children killed? What's your favorite and least favorite entry in the series? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.